Hello, listeners. Welcome to Courage Talks. Special guest today is Aarti Swaminathan. She is the first vegan woman Ironman worldwide or India?
In India.
Okay, in India. And she's doing some fantastic work now, being a part of other people's journey, whether it's Ironman or High Rocks, especially with her role in Yoska. Welcome, Aarti.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.
And so the topic is Courage Talks. The story behind it is my book, Against All Odds. And during the narration of my father's story for the book, he told me about many instances during his childhood where he had to face a lot of difficulties. And obviously, he came out strong out of that. And I thought it's a good topic to take up. When I started marketing and promoting the book, I said, rather than talking about the book, I might as well talk about courage, which is like the underlying force throughout the book. What's your definition of courage?
I think women in general very courageous, but just that we are covered inside and we don't want to come out and express. My journey has been courageous as well because I have stepped into different lifestyles at different stages of life. And it's all because of me taking those courageous steps, taking up challenges at every step of the way in life. And I can proudly say that I don't have any regrets and I've only been learning all this 40 years of my life.
Any role model for courage? Whom do you look up at?
Somebody at home, my mom, who is a working mom, care of a lot of things. She's my immediate inspiration that I look up to her in a lot of ways. For somebody who was able to manage work-life balance, also, focusing on her career back then. She was a banker. So I take a lot of inspiration from her to juggle between jobs, take care of the kids. We were a handful, trust me, for her to manage. And my dad, my second inspiration, because he was the one who was holding the foot down, saying, hey, you want to focus on your career, go ahead. You always need that support system. So if not for him, I don't think any of us in the family could have reached and lived our dreams, in our lives.
What was growing up like? What are the earliest memories you have of your childhood? Maybe the oldest possible recollection of you as a child.
I think I was a brat to start off with. I was definitely a handsful for my parents to kind of manage. They couldn't put me into one place. Very tomboyish, want to go beat up boys. I still remember
You
dad coming.
you actually did.
I actually did. So my
Tell
brother
us
was
about
like,
it. What prompted the whole episode?
I think more of girls can't do is something that I've never taken from a very young age because
Yeah.
my parents have always given equal weightages and equal opportunity for my brother and myself. I have an elder brother who's 4 years elder to me. So they've always treated both of us equal and they've never shied away from throwing us into deep, wells, whether it is to learn something from life or to learn from a situation. They've made us travel alone at a very young age. So I think they've never treated us very differently and that's what we have been brought up. So it was very challenging for me when suddenly guys said, you can't play gully cricket, girls don't play cricket or they can't play football. So I think those are some small things. The minute I heard no, then I was like, I want to do it. That's the attitude I've always had. I think that used to, get me into trouble. So my dad always had to come and, be the person to say, hey, I'll take care and make sure it doesn't happen again and all of that. And again, a very mediocre and just an above average kid because sports was my primary motive during school and college. So didn't really focus on studies. Of course, mom was like, hey, what are you going to do with life? Sports is not what's is going to feed you types, but dad was very supportive. And I've played every sport possible except for cricket and tennis. I've
Except for cricket.
experienced, yeah, except for cricket and tennis for whatever reason. I didn't get an opportunity to play, but every other sport, you name it,
You didn't find suitable people around you to play.
probably. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's a very beautiful childhood I had.
So I believe you got medals at state and national level, and you had dreamt of participate or representing India in the Olympics. Was that the only dream you had? And if not for sports, what is it likely that a career that you would have ended up into?
I honestly, I mean, now though I've created a career for myself, but back then I
Good.
think sports was my primary focus because even during my 11th and 12th, I took the most easiest way out. I took commerce and I said I'll keep studies low so that I can focus more on the sporting career.
Yeah.
So coming from the most forward cast, it was. I mean, I knew it was going to be difficult, so my only odds were to be at the top level in terms of the performance. So spent a lot of time on the ground. So like
Mm.
We used to start our training at 5 a.m. and dad used to drop me in the ground, pick me up at 8ish. We used to get special permission from the school not to attend the assembly. We can
Yeah.
directly join classes. Similarly, in the last 2:30, we leave our classes because we don't have to attend the last two sessions. We have special
Mhm.
training to do and all of that. So dad was one person who was always taking me around because mom was working, she was away. So dad
Yeah.
used to take that responsibility of taking me and my brother. So my brother was also into sports. So I think it was there in the gene. Dad used to be a athlete himself during his childhood. So he
Mm.
was always very encouraging of my brother and I doing sport. So it came naturally for us. And since my brother Ashwin was into sports, he was already into district level and state level. So me following his footsteps was much easier, though I didn't follow his footsteps on the studies because he was a topper in school. It never, studies and me were poles apart during school. Like, I mean, I still remember my mom telling me, you could have just written for 100 marks, you would have got 80. You just write for 50 marks and get 45 and be happy about it. So I used to hate writing. I used to be lazy. If you want
Mhm.
to ask me, stay whole night, train, I would be more than happy. Early in the mornings, I used to be the one calling my friends to get up. I used to be their alarm so that I don't miss training because of them. Because you have these buddy runs, you form the team relay and all of that. So it's
Yeah.
important the entire team is there for training. That's what has disciplined us. Sports has been the biggest way for me in life back then. And I didn't know
Mhm.
anything beyond representing Olympics because that was the big dream, right? Back then, there were hardly a handful of us. I used to be greatly inspired by PT Usha, Anju Bobby
Mhm.
George. Those were people who used to be my idol. And that's why I said, okay, let me come to Chennai to pursue that as a career. But unfortunately, at that point in time, financially, we weren't sound enough to put me from a small town to a metropolitan city to train. And
Mhm.
then I had those crossroads to decide what I want to do beyond sports. That was a very difficult decision because you have spent all your childhood, you're sacrificing a lot of things when you come into competitive sports.
Mhm.
Whether being with your friends, traveling, touring, and all of that, I never had an opportunity because I was only focusing on sports. So when that crossroad happened, it was very difficult to kind of understand. But I think my dad put it very subtle to me is that, your life doesn't end here. Yes, if not one, let's look at what is the next option. So I was very clear that if sports is not happening, I don't want to do what everybody is doing because that's something that is inbuilt or that's my trait as a very young child. I've never done what everybody does. I've always wanted to be that thoda hatke kuch karna hai types. At that cross junction, I was a very creative person. I used to paint, draw. I think again taken it from my grandmom, my
Mhm.
dad's mom, who's a extremely creative artist. She does a lot of paintings back then. She used to be very creative. So I think
Yeah.
I've taken that from her. And the house used to be filled with a lot of my paintings. Even now, there are a few of them hanging in my Chennai house as well. So, very creative person. So, I knew I had two hats. If not sports, I said I'll get into something to do with creative art.
Yeah.
So, I knew commerce, banking. I've seen my mom struggling. I've seen my whole family being bankers, CA. That's not the road I wanted to take. Doing
Mm.
BCom, MCom, or MBA was like everybody is doing that. I wanted to
Yeah.
do something very different. And again, fashion designing was not very popular back then in 2000, 2004. So when I went and told my parents I want to get into visual communication or fashion designing, they were like, okay, now you are all these while into sports, doing something none of the family members have been doing. Suddenly you're talking about fashion designing, visual communication, and things. Luckily, I had a Bharadasan University and a women's college in
Mhm.
Trichy. So my mom was very supportive. She said, okay, let me do some research to understand where the scope is. I mean, typical Indian family, right? You want to know where you're putting your daughter into and how the career for her is going to be. Because
Yeah.
they always felt as kids, we need to be independent. We need to
Mm.
do what we're good at and build a career out of it, build a passion towards it. So sports was still school and college. Till my undergraduation, I still tried to represent my university in track and field. But
Mhm.
once I switched hats from being a mediocre to be a top gold medalist in my university, that was a huge shift. And my parents were like, okay, so she's not idiot and it's not that she doesn't study. It's just that her interest was in something else. And now her interest is into fashion designing. And I was a university topper in Bharadasan University. So I think life took that turn. I enjoyed.
Mhm.
I thoroughly
Okay.
enjoyed what I did. and that's kind of the shift into the fashion industry.
What events or sports were you active in? Which ones did you reach the state or the national level?
So I was a 400 and 800-meter sprinter, and long
Okay.
jump and javelin were my field sport. And
Mhm.
a couple of years back, I mean, me and a friend of mine from our school held the district records, but I think 6 years out of sports, somebody broke that. It was nice to see the young lads coming and breaking those district and the state records. Yeah.
So you did make it to the national team?
Yes.
But doesn't it work that way that once you make it to the national team, the state will?
There is still certain amount of training and things like that that comes from a private institution. Back then, it used to be Prime Sports Academy. Jane, Priyas, Lakshmi, there used to be a lot of very fine Tamil Nadu based athletes. So back
Yeah.
then, sports wasn't backed up by SDAT, now which they are. If you see
Mhm.
the infrastructure, the support, and all of that is far superior. Back then, it wasn't that much. And I had to move to Chennai for that. And I
Yeah.
mean, that's a cost, right? I mean,
Yeah.
though the academy is happy to take you in, but there's a cost that's incurred. Like you need
Got
to take care of your food, logistics, your stay, then your schooling, and all of that still is a substantial amount
got it.
that you have to kind of put in, which at that point in time we had to kind of take that decision whether it is doable or not doable.
And your brother did make it?
No, I mean, he was a bookworm, so I think he did till 10th, and then he said no, he wanted to be a doctor. At least
Okay.
he wanted to be a veterinary doctor, but then he pursued in studies and things like that. But yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately, he couldn't be a doctor, but he's happy where he is with supply chain management, working for Amazon. So yeah.
And a lot of these sports obviously involve failure, not being able to get what you want. How were you initially when you did not come among the top three, or you didn't get the kind of result you wanted? What was your typical reaction like?
For me, I think one thing I've learned because of having a sibling, you don't get everything in a plate, right? There's always a competition that you need to do something better. There's always a comparison. So that was always there at home and school
Hmm.
because my brother used to be an all-rounder. I was never so. Every time a teacher will like, "You're Ashwin's sister? Are you serious?" That's the attitude that I used to get from teachers and everybody around. So I didn't take it negative, but it's always been a competitive world, right? There's struggle at home. You need to prove yourself to your parents, then to your immediate, friends and family. So for me, it was more the journey. And I think sports per se teaches you to accept failure because there's only going to be one winner. There's a second and a third place.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at 100 meters, it's fractions of a second is what determines who's the second and the third, right?
Yeah.
So not everybody can be first, but we can always aspire to be the number one. So I
Yeah.
love the journey of trying to be the best, but I wouldn't say I settle for a two and a three, but I always aspire to be that one. Okay, today was not just my day. Let me work harder and come back the next race, next race, next race. I think that's what has built a very strong foundation for me now that because I see that working very well in my life also. Every setback that I have, I've always bounced back. I've never said, oh, what life thrown at me? Why is life throwing certain things at me? Oh, why just me? I've never questioned that. I've taken it with willingness, with a smile on my face, saying, okay, this is the situation. Let's see what the best and the worst case is. Leave the worst, take the learnings, and move forward. I think that's
Hmm.
something that I've learned as a very young kid that, life is full of competition, life is full of cutthroat, but I think
Yeah.
you need to survive, and who survives is what lasts for long.
And then somewhere you deviated, you lost track, you ended up eating a lot of junk food and went to what, 85 kgs. How did that misstep happen?
See, what happens is, as Indians, I think, or even me as a person, you start focusing on something, you just want to set focus, right? You're such an
Yeah.
ambitious person. And getting into the fashion industry, which is at a senior level, it's a very male dominated. At a employee at a lower level, it is more female driven because the tailors are 80% women employees, right? But
Hmm.
at a senior level, if you look at it, it is very male dominated. Now to not, but I'm talking about back then in 2004, 2006. It
Yeah.
was a very male dominated, especially at a senior level. So I
Hmm.
always said, okay, why not a woman go and be an entrepreneur? Why not we sit in a general manager's seat and things like that? So I will
Yeah.
always aspire to reach greater heights. And that was my driving force. I wanted to sit just below my CEO in less than 6 years. I used to set certain unrealistic goals which the market feels is unrealistic, but I said no, let me target. Even I want
Yeah.
to target to be an entrepreneur, let me set something at least slightly lesser, but let me target for the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
And I generally, when I start liking to do things that I love doing, I think that's human, right? We kind of delve into it, we forget about our health, we forget about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So work kind of became my utmost priority, and it was like an addiction to me. I needed to reach a certain point, I needed to learn as much as I can. So I really didn't jump too many companies. That's something I wanted to be in a startup, wanted to learn, grow with the company. This is something that I've learned it the hard way, but it's important that you don't go straight away to a MNC, sit there, try to be pocketing yourself. Instead, I said, okay, let me start with a startup, grow along with them as they also grow, because that's when I get opportunity to learn, do what I like doing. So
Yeah.
luckily, the first company I spent about 2 years, and then I jumped to another company where I spent about 11 years with them. It was an
Mhm.
absolute starter. We were just 4 5 employees with a more as a licensing business, and then we set up to have 150 machine factory, things like that. So I grew along with the company, and we used to slog. I mean, literally 16 hours, 17 hours of work is what we need to put. And I used
Mhm.
to, at that point in time, work with almost all the top brands. You name it, I was working for them. The Pumas, the Levi's, the Wranglers, Tommy's. We were working for everyone. So
Yeah.
the working hours started from, say, some days at 2:30 a.m. because we used to work for Australian clients, and used to
Mhm.
end really late because we used to work for US based clients as well. So
Yeah.
you're very young, your blood is all boiling, you want to achieve a lot of things. And when somebody is giving you an opportunity to go make mistakes, it's okay, I'm backing you. You just want
Yeah.
to get the best out of it. So I
True.
had great bosses who used to really encourage me, it's okay, you make mistakes, we are there to back you up types. So that
Yeah.
kind of, helped me and motivated me to do something beyond what everybody thinks is possible. And I started learning very quick, and I started growing up the ladder very soon. In 10 years, I was almost heading an entire design team with so many people below me, and managing a larger business portfolio and all of that. I mean, while I had people like, wow, at a young age, like seniors in years of experience and age were reporting to me, there was a lot of politics and all of that kind of set in. So obviously, it is very stressful. So you obviously eat all the wrong things at the wrong
Yeah.
hours. You're young, you think you're cat's whiskers, you can come back to health whenever you want. But I think when I was nearing close to 30 is when it hit me hard, when I was huffing and puffing to just climb one flight of stairs. It was very challenging to do a lot of basic things of lifting certain things up, which was very much doable, say, 10 years before. And now it's very depressing, and you feel very low about yourself, right? For
Mm.
somebody who's always been into sport and being so active, suddenly
Mm.
just taking one flight of stairs, and you're huffing and puffing and seeing yourself in a mirror, that hit me hard when I was turning 30.
And then the transformation happened. You went from what, 85 to 60 in how much time?
That's a journey by itself, because one of my close friend who had come to visit from my school days, she came to visit me, and we had a great time. We had a dinner and all of that. When she was leaving, she just whispered in my ear saying that, you know what, Aarti, I'm missing the Aarti that we used to knew. Not in the career side of things, but hale and healthy, because I can see how much you're struggling to walk, to do a lot of things which you used to enjoy doing. She
Yeah.
just whispered that in my ears, and that actually hit me hard. And then I said, okay, I'm turning 30, and I've almost reached a certain level in terms of my career front. And I knew things are going to be perfectly fine. And it's not that I'm needed, and I had more time in hand. Let me put it that way. So I had that
Mm.
me time with me now, and I didn't
Mm.
know what to do with it. And when this friend kind of put that into my head, I said, okay, I mean, now, if not now, then when? And if not me, then who else? If
Yeah.
I'm not going to take my ownership and responsibility for myself, nobody else is going to be. And
Yeah.
if not now, I'm not going to do that at another 10 years from now. So I think
Mm.
that 30 was when I said, okay, what can I do? And by then, my brother had also gone through the same phase, and he was also going through a lot in his career, traveling, eating the wrong things, odd hours, and all of that. And he had actually started getting into endurance sport. He was getting into half marathons and a marathon back then, and this was around 2012, 13. I've interacted with him. I've asked him, hey, how does this whole thing work and things like that. And I said, okay, I mean, the Olympic dream has never gone. It was just in the back burner. And
Yeah.
I think this conversation with this friend and with the family, it kind of brought that memory back. And I just casually asked my brother, do you think going back and getting into track and field at the master's level, do you think is it worth putting the time and effort? And do you think is it possible? So
Yeah.
we had a very realistic and a point blank discussion saying that, hey, if you want to get into masters and all of that, it's going to take at least another 3-4 years, because one is
Mm.
shedding the weight, then, getting back into those grooves of training your fast twitch muscles. Yes, there will still be a muscle memory, but you need to bring it back, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it's important that you spend that much of a time, and are you ready to spend that much of a time? And with the,
Mhm.
with the job that you have currently, and with the amount of training that you need to put, do you think you'll be able to balance all of it? So I think my
Yeah.
parents, my brother and I, we sat and we had a very realistic conversation. And I did
Mm.
reach out to my PT teachers and my back then coach and asked them, hey, what do you think? And they all said the same thing. As long as you're ready to put in that kind of a time and effort and come back into track and field, it's going to take about
Mm.
at least say 3 years. Are you ready for, up for that game? And
Yeah.
then that's when I was a swimmer during my, I mean, childhood, right? So I was a sick child. So I used to have wheezing and things. So my dad had already put me into swimming at a very young age so that it improves my lung capacity and things. So I knew
Yeah.
swimming. So
Mm.
obviously we all used to cycle to school. So cycling was very comfortable for us.
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, I came across Ironman because that there was a race which was happening in Chennai by the Chennai Trekking Club in
Mhm.
2014. And I went to volunteer to understand, okay, what is this sport? I mean, people are
Mm.
swimming, cycling, and running. I've heard about it even during my school days, but I've nearly not thought that if I'll be capable. So while this journey of now I need to lose weight is my
Mm.
priority, I said, okay, let
Mm.
me put a structured way to it, because the minute I start running, I know with the weight and all of that, again, putting the athlete hat into my head, I said, that's not practically viable. I'm sure I'll land up in an injury than
Yeah.
trying to shed some fat out here. And I
Yeah.
also knew that it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen 3 months down the line. It's going to be a gradual process, and I need to build a lot of patience. Then me and my brother, we spoke, and I said, okay, let me start with swim. And that's the best way because the impact is lesser. But then that's the best way to lose a lot of excess fat. And
Yeah.
then we started with cycling. And then once I reached about 65, 67 kilos, that's when I started running. So it took me about a year to get into running. But
Mm.
the transformation started in 2014 end and 2015. The whole of 2015 was purely focusing on losing that excess fat, getting back into some decent shape. I didn't have a number. All I
Mm.
felt was I need to get into a decent shape where I don't huff and puff. I run
Yeah.
comfortably, I can swim comfortably, I can cycle comfortably, and maybe do a short distance triathlon and see whether I really have a passion and a liking towards it.
Were you documenting the journey? Were you capturing your thoughts at this point of
Yeah,
time?
I love journaling. I have a lot of my diaries in my cupboard, which I still journal most of my days.
Yeah.
Especially when you're training, it helps. It helps you understand a lot of things,
Yeah.
especially what you go through and things. So I love journaling, and I still continue to do that.
So broadly, during this transformative journey, if you just take a shot at it, what percentage of your notes were positive and what were negative?
The initial days, it was all abusing myself. Why did I take up this challenge? It all used to be only crying.
Yeah.
Those were the journals because of the pain, not knowing
Yeah.
a lot of things, right? I mean, you had
Yeah.
to learn all of this by yourself. Not everybody kind of helps you to understand and things like that. So I think it was more as a learning curve for me. But I think the first 3-4 months, I was just cribbing. Why did I take up this
Yeah.
challenge? Why am I torturing myself? There used to be a lot of those kind of journals in the first 3-4 months. But then
Yeah.
once I started seeing results, because I didn't see results overnight, it took me at least three
It take.
months after I started swimming. That's when
Yeah.
I started seeing results. I mean, it was like very gradual but consistent. And that's when I said, okay, the minute I saw that result of, okay, I was able to shed about 4 kilos in, not four, yeah, close to 4 kilos in 3 months. And that's when it hit me like, okay, so I am doing the right thing. I'm heading towards the right direction. It's important that I stick and look at the bigger picture, not be short goal focused. Let's see the bigger picture and see what we could do to working towards that. Now if I go back to the journal, obviously a lot of positive things, but back then I think 60% of it was just abusing myself, saying, cribbing about a lot of things, pain, agony, frustration, and all of it. But now if I look at
Yeah.
it holistically, now 10 years, a lot of
Yeah.
positive things have happened down the road.
And I'm assuming you did obviously start changing your diet as well as you went along this journey. But turning vegan, there's a sentimental story behind it. Why don't you just tell us what happened?
Sure. So when I started getting into triathlon, I think my first race was in 2016. Short Olympic distance is what
Yeah.
I wanted to do. And that was a gift to myself for my 30th birthday. So every year
Hmm.
I do something very different for my birthday. Either I give something for myself, either a drawing class or photography. So things like that. I like to take up something new, learn a new language, do something interesting, learn something new for my birthday. This I started from when I turned 21. So
Hmm.
for my 30th birthday, I said, okay, let me gift myself a triathlon race. And that's how I went and signed up. Very positively saying, I will be able to sustain. I should just finish. Didn't have big goals, big targets, or anything of that sort. Just wanted to go and do the race. So that's when I met a good fellow friend called Anuvidya.
Hmm.
And she was into veganism, following plant-based diet and all of it. And now and then I used to train with her. She had a slightly more experience than me because of the friends that she knew who were supporting her and all of that. So we used
Yeah.
to be like good buddies when we started triathlon training, and we used to
Hmm.
run together, swim together when we go for open water swim sessions. And that's how
Yeah.
we started knowing each other for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And she went for a Women's Day trek and the wildfire in Theni incident, which happened in 2018. So we
Oh,
lost her and a few other friends of mine
sorry
in
to hear.
that. Yeah. So on her death day is when I decided to turn vegan. And because being the first vegan Ironman of India was her dream, it was definitely not mine. And I just wanted to fulfill it on her behalf. I mean, I didn't know what I was thinking. I think I was very emotional. She's a good friend. We wanted to achieve a lot of things. We wanted to tattoo the Ironman together. We had a lot of dreams and things that we wanted to do. And she's somebody like is a go-to person for me when I have my high days, when I have my low days. She's one person I can just text her, hey Anu, are you around? Can we just catch up types?
Yeah.
So, missing somebody that close was a huge loss for me. So I didn't know what to do and how to cope up with that, because that's the first somebody that close, and that's the first loss that I'm going through in my life as well. So I didn't know what to do. So I said, I just decided that day that I'll turn vegan. So on March is when I turned vegan in 2018, and I didn't know a thing. I didn't even know water was vegan. We've spoken a lot about it, but I was not seriously looking to become a vegan. And I used to pull a leg saying that I'm a vegetarian. I mean, I'm an eggetarian, but I used to pull a legs saying that,
Hmm.
hey, what are you trying to eat only plants and all of this? And how are you going to survive, sustain and all of it? And then suddenly for me, it was definitely very challenging, but it
Hmm.
was a very emotional decision that I took. When I came and told my parents, they were like, are you sure you want to do this? But I think my biggest support system was my mom, because to change the whole thing, I mean, being from a Brahmin family, ghee and curd are our staple food. I mean, suddenly if you tell my mom that you can't, I'm not planning to have it from the next day, she's like, have you gone crazy? Is one nut loose in
Yeah.
your brain or something? That was the first reaction. But then eventually she understood that, okay, this is what I want personally, and this is something to respect a good friend and a fellow triathlete. So they kind of understood what I was trying to do here, but they were also clueless. My mom took a lot of effort. She spoke to my aunt, my uncle who's a doctor, understood what she needs to cook for me, what I need to eat, what I should not eat, what comes under the plant based diet, and
Yeah.
all of that. She took a lot of effort. Then the challenge was, as I said, I didn't even know if water was vegan. I used to Google everything and ask whether certain things are vegan or how do I change certain things. And it was very challenging. But I think end of the day, it was for her more than
Hmm.
my goal and things. While both of us wanted to be an Ironman and all of that, but turning vegan and fulfilling her dream was the only thing I had in mind, and that's all I wanted to do. I don't know how long it would take, when I could complete, nothing. I was clueless, but I said, okay, let me take this up. At least let me respect a fellow athlete who
Yeah.
has been training for more than what I have trained for many
Yeah.
more years. She's much younger to me. She had a vision, she had a motive in life that she wanted to reach a certain point. Okay, let me at least fulfill that. And I hope, she'll travel with me through the whole journey. So,
Got it.
yeah, that's the reason I turned vegan.
And you did your first half iron in 2018. Roughly, what was the timing like and where was it?
My first half was in Tonur, near Mysore. I think I
Mm-hmm.
just finished before the cutoff. The half Ironman back then was 8.5 hours. I think I took solid 8 hours. And I mean, average swimmer, open waters. I had a lot of fear for open waters, though I am a swimmer in the pool. Swimming, I mean, cycling away from Chennai. Chennai's are flat roads. Tonur had a lot
Yeah.
of hilly course. It was a rolling terrain. Running in a heat and all of that. I think I literally walked half the first half. I think I ran. The second half, I think I literally walked. But finishing that first 70.3 in Tonur actually, meant a lot to me because it was brutal, but I enjoyed. Somewhere the inner child in me was getting happy because I'm getting one step closer to the bigger picture. I knew I couldn't drastically jump into being an Ironman, and it's a course, right? It
Yeah.
takes certain time. You can't jump from 5K to do a full marathon the next month. It needs a certain timing because obviously when you're from a sports background, you understand what it takes. You have the realistic picture. You're not trying to build castles in your head saying things will turn overnight. I mean, I've
Yeah.
made my course of mistakes. I've learned it the hard way. I had a immune system collapse because I turned vegan. I didn't know what B12 was. I didn't know what D3 was. I'm not a biology student, so I mean, I had no idea about all of these. So I got admitted in the hospital, and that's when the doctor said, "Hey, your immune system has collapsed. How can you be so negligent about certain things?" I said, "I didn't know something existed like this." So that's when I said, "Okay, let me study about it." So I went
Yeah.
ahead and did my diploma in plant-based nutrition, just
Oh, yeah.
to I just wanted to educate myself. Now that
Hmm.
I'm helping a lot of vegan athletes who reach out to me saying, "Hey, I'm a vegan. I didn't know something is possible. You have done it. Can you help me out?" types. I mean, that point in time, nobody was there to guide me,
Hmm.
walk me through what I can do, what I can't do. And again, being a plant-based athlete to being vegan is very different. When
Hmm.
you want to claim yourself being a vegan athlete, which means you can't use any plant-based products. So from your shoes to your belts to everything, you need to be so thoughtful about that you're not wearing anything which is even remotely chance of having an animal product on it,
Wow.
right?
Are you that?
I am that, yeah. So
Wow. Okay.
those are things I didn't know. So I mean, I was running with some shoes which I didn't know whether it had certain soles. Now I would say I'm an ethical vegan. I wouldn't say I'm 100% in
Hmm.
par. I'm not, because there are so many uncertainties. I don't know where certain products of a shoe is coming from. I don't want to deep dive into it and say things that could offend a lot of other viewers here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to be as ethical as possible to the best of my understanding and my knowledge of the
Mm-hmm.
information I have about a certain product, right?
Right.
Somebody suddenly will see my shoe tomorrow and say, "Hey, that's not vegan. What are you doing?" Types. I'm fine. If you're going to tell me that's not vegan, then I'll stop wearing them. But I'm doing
Hmm.
my best research to understand and things. But at least when I wanted to do my Ironman, I was very clear. So I made sure the brands that I were associated with, the products that I was wearing, consuming, were all vegan driven and plant based driven, so that it was for somebody and I wanted to be as ethical and as close as possible. So it was a beautiful journey, but I had my share learnings, and it was all brutal. I mean, it was like collapsing during trainings, not having the right nutrition. So glad I went through the hardship because I'm able to teach and guide a lot of athletes now as a coach.
And your eventual dream of the full Ironman happened in Busselton in Australia in 2019. So, how was the journey to go from half to full? I mean, was it just? I mean, I keep saying, right, full marathon is not half marathon into two, and definitely full Ironman is not half Ironman into two. So, what was your experience like to migrate
Completely
to the full?
agree. I think, as I said, the bigger picture, even in 2016, when I got into triathlon, was to do an Ironman. That was very clear. That picture, the visualization, the dream, the goal was absolutely clear. But just that I wanted to take it gradually and not build it over just a year and then say, okay, I've done an Ironman, I'm done with it. I like the process. It's brutal. It's also because not many women had actually done an Ironman distance from India. When I got into this sport, it was just Anu Vaidyanathan, who's based out of Canada, who had done the race. And
Yeah.
then it was Ishwari Andiyappan, whose race I saw in the Indian soil. Of course, she did the Ironman full distance, but it's not the Ironman title because she did it in about 21 hours. And
Okay.
that's the race I personally saw and got aspired and inspired to do the race, right?
Got it.
So I knew it was not going to be a easy task, and I knew it is going to take some time.
Hmm.
And I was ready to give that time and effort, and I was happy to wait, learn the whole process. So if you ask me, from 2016 to 2019, it took me about 3 years to reach that. And
Right.
in between 3 months of absolutely no training, nothing, because of my health issues, I had an ITB issue, so I had to recover for about close to 3 months. So I had my fair share of, learning, unlearning, and all of that, because when you're a sprinter, your fast twitch muscle works a lot. So for
Yeah.
me, the learning started off unlearning a certain things. I thought 5K I'll be sprinting. That's the mindset I had, but it's not. So you need to, unlearn the sprinter in you and then relearn the endurance athlete in you was my biggest, starting point for me to say.
Right.
And I also knew that I'm not going to straight away go do an Ironman distance. So I wanted to do a few local Olympic distance, half
Yeah.
Ironman distance. So I did about 3 to 4 Olympic distance and then did about 3 local half Ironman distance. And
Yeah.
I said, okay, 2019 was the year for me to claim my title of being an Ironman. And in the journey, in preparation to that, I said, I'll need to do at least 170.3 Ironman 70.3 at an international arena, because international races are different. So
Yeah.
how do I travel? And suddenly deciding to travel to Australia, all of that. And Australia was only because of Deepak. So I was training with Deepak. I
Hmm.
joined Deepak Yoska in 2017 June.
Okay.
Deepak trained me for my first half Ironman, and he said, I'll train you for free. I said, okay, that's a great deal. So I'll jump in, and I said, okay, chalo, you please train me. So that's
Yeah.
my first interaction with Deepak, and he was the one who trained me all the way to my Busselton race. And since he's based out of Australia, and that was his first Ironman race as well. So kind of following your coach's footstep, and a lot of Indians generally travel to that race. And a lot
Okay.
of Yoskites were also traveling for that race. So it kind of became an extended family, all going together, known people. So you're going and doing something that massive, because globally it is called world's toughest one-day endurance sport. So when it has such a large tagline, when your family is not coming with you, you're going to be traveling alone. At least known people together, it helps a
First.
lot, right?
True.
So I said, okay, then in that case, I will go that route. And December was good. I had 270.3 races before I did a full Ironman. So I knew my calendar was
Hmm.
perfectly planned in such a way. So I did my first international race in 2019 Feb, Colombo. And it was a great race. My first international race experience, finished it in 6 hours, 37 minutes. And stood fifth in my age group. And it was a great experience. Colombo as a country, international race for them. It was the second edition for them. They had done a phenomenal job. A lot of Indians again had participated, meeting new triathletes. I didn't even know there's a larger community than what I've seen in Chennai. I mean, that's how short sighted I was, thinking, oh, only triathletes are from Chennai and nowhere
Yeah.
else. And to see such a large contenders of Indians coming and racing in Colombo was great. Meeting them there, learning their life experience and things. And then obviously Yoska was organizing the first edition Ironman 70.3 Goa race. So
Yeah.
Deepak said, as an athlete, you should be part of the first edition, because then I get honest feedbacks. As an organizer, I'll know how things are and all of it. And I said, yes. I immediately registered for the race. And I think I was the second or the third participant to register for the Goa race. And I said, yes, let's do this. And it was a tough course, but I think that is what is required when you're training for Ironman kind of a distance. And by then I had not done, like when I was doing Colombo, I've not done full marathons. I didn't know what it takes to run a full marathon. So I politely asked Deepak. Deepak said my first full marathon was on an Ironman race. I mean, it's not important that it is mandate. I mean, more than saying important, mandate for you to do a Ironman, I mean, full marathon for you to do an Ironman race. So I said, okay, I mean, sounds interesting and fine, but
So he said it's not important. You can
it is
actually,
okay. It is not mandate that you should do a full marathon.
it's not
And
being asked
yeah,
definitely by
exactly.
the organizers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But because you already train close to 12 hours in your training for the
mm,
race, so Ironman is
true.
a purely a mental game.
Of
So I said,
course.
I mean, that being said, I still like to do a full marathon to test waters because I don't want to be surprised after running a half marathon saying, oh shit, I need to not run another half marathon,
Yeah.
after cycling 180 kilometers, right? So
Yeah.
mentally, at least
True.
I know what to anticipate. So Deepak said,
Yeah.
if you want to try, then do your maiden in Hyderabad. I was like,
Okay.
okay. Doing the toughest race in the toughest
Yeah.
course in India, I said, okay, maybe he has a plan. What he was trying to build me for mentally is that Hyderabad is going to be a tough course, but that's how
Yeah.
brutal to run a full marathon after cycling 180 and swimming a 4 kilometers, 3.8
True.
kilometers. Actually, that's
True.
what he was trying to put into perspective for me, and which
Yeah.
is absolutely important. And I take that. I mean, I finished it in 5 hours 20 minutes in my first maiden full marathon, and I knew what it is going to be and what I need to anticipate. Then the Goa race happened, and my life actually turned post the Goa race. A lot of lessons, and that was the pursuit of happiness for me. Why am I so crazy about this sport? And then in another month and a half, I went and did Busselton race. Finished in 14 hours, 44 minutes, 44 seconds. I don't know what the force to do with, but it was a great race. And I think I was emotional entire run. I almost felt Anu was running alongside me because I didn't think of anybody else. It was not about me finishing the race or my glory or anything of that sort. It was just
Right.
her. I just wanted to do justice to her family. I just wanted to give the family the medal and say, this is what Anu would have brought back home types. That's the only thing that was running in my mind. It was a brutal race because
Mhm.
first is always special. I was also just coming out of a injury, so I didn't know how things would go, but I'm glad I finished it in 14 hours 44 minutes, and it was a phenomenal race. And to see all Indians, so many other participants, and one highlight is there used to be a lot of writings on the road to encourage athletes,
Yeah.
and you basically do 4 laps for the full marathon in Busselton course. And every time I read plant power, some kid has drawn it in chalk saying plant power. I think that was, I felt as if Anu had come and done
Yeah.
something there. I mean, out of the blue, the entire course, you have somebody written that so massively, saying
Yeah.
plant power. I think that was very emotional for me. And
Yeah.
finished the line after crossing the finish line, I just cried. I just cried the next couple of minutes. Couldn't accept that I'd finished the race, holding the Indian
Hmm.
flag, which is again very close to representing your nation in an international arena. So all of that kind of
Yeah.
was a very emotional burst out. I think I went back to the room and I cried, but tears just emotionally just rolled down at the finish line. A moment that I will cherish for rest of my life. The first Ironman race. I think first races are generally very special, but this was
Of
very
course.
special. And I think after so many years of training, putting so many hours of hard work, and finally you cross the finish line. That emotion, I'm sure, as an athlete, you know it how it feels. But yeah, I'm
Of course.
glad
Yeah.
I was able to
Yeah.
finish the race.
Beautiful story, no doubt about that. But there is always a lull after you finish. What next? So, was it difficult for you to plan out the next one? How much time did it take you before you signed up the next one? And
So I have a very interesting story. When I said Goa was the turning point in my life, uh,
yeah.
Goa was the most challenging race and the most fruitful race for me because it gave me a lot of perspective and
Hmm.
what me as an individual is capable of doing. I won't take too much of your time, but
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
that's totally fine. Please.
happened on the races. Goa race is obviously popular for its jellyfish thing. So I entered the water in just
Yeah.
150 meters into the
Jellyfish are the unregistered participants in
absolutely
every.
yeah. So I enter the water in less than 150 meters. I get stung by the jellyfish on my left hand. And for whatever reason, I think it fell in love with me, never decided to leave my hand. So I had to swim, go to the closest kayak. I literally asked the kayak person to remove the jellyfish, and by then it has stung very badly. I was
Mhm.
in a lot of pain. I swam the 1.9 literally with just one hand. I come out of the water because I wanted to crack the personal best race in this, and I wanted to qualify for the world championship. That was the dream for me in 2019. More than the Ironman side of things, getting that
Mhm.
was there. But I wanted to clinch the, representing India in the world championship was the dream. So I wanted to give my 100% for this race. So
Mhm.
actually, though Ironman was my A race, but for the 70.3 Goa was my A race. I get onto the bike. I know who my competitor are. She's just 15 minutes ahead of me. Because of my jellyfish thing, I had to get the first aid done and then run into the transition, get onto my bike. So I knew both of us are good in our bike. So I said, let me hammer. It's a three lapper of the course. I almost closed down the deficit. First lap, second lap, and third lap when we are almost neck to neck. Now the decision would be in the run course. So I'm fairly confident that both of us are again, pretty decent runners as well. So I knew the decision making would be the run leg. So I said, okay, let me put a throttle, complete my 100% effort on the half marathon after this bike leg. I'm all
Yeah.
prepared, entering the last aid station to grab a banana because I knew I can't immediately jump into getting a gel or anything because from my aerodynamics, I'm getting into a vertical mode
Yeah.
for my run leg. So I wanted to grab a last banana at the aid station. So I enter the aid station, I grab the banana, I put it into my mouth, and as I'm exiting, I'm seeing an athlete coming closer, closer, closer to me. And I try to avoid the collision and I skid and I fall. My top tube breaks into two.
Oh
My
man.
my carbon bike just broke. The top tube broke into two, and I fell. I was bleeding from my head to toe. The first aid came. They said they will band-aid me. They'll do this. I said no. I'll band-aid the bike. So I started band-aiding the bike, and I hopped onto the bike and I started running because I had another 5.5 kilometers to finish. In less than
Okay.
1 kilometer, I saw a mentor of mine who used to help me in my bike. I shouted out to him and I asked, can I ride with a broken bike? He said, no, you will have another accident. Do not do that. So I had about 4 kilometers. I said, okay, I'll get off the bike and I started running with my cycle to the
Yeah.
T2. And then I was bleeding. Everybody in the T2 were like, you need to go to a medical tent. I knew if the minute I enter a medical tent, I won't be able to complete my race. I said, it's okay. For me, my only vision was to get on and get my world championship title. So I said, come what may, I will start running. So I started running. Every time somebody poured ice water, because I was bruised all over, it used to burn like crazy. A lot of them didn't know whether I was crying, whether it was the ice water, what was happening. But I finished the race. Definitely not a personal best timing, but I stood second in the podium and I missed the world championship slot because the person who came first took the slot, and in my age group, there were only one slot. So I missed that slot. So I was very disappointed, but that's when I promised myself that I will train harder. I will go stand in the podium and claim my title. I don't want it to be a part of a roll down.
Mhm.
I want to be someone who's deserving to get that, world championship, be on the podium and then claim my title. Is
Yeah.
something that I had kind of frozen on that evening, saying that somehow I will do whatever it takes, whatever training I need to do, but I want to stand on the podium, climb my world championship title. So, coming back to your question, I think post my Ironman race, I clearly knew where my head was because it's important to understand where your forte is, whether you're a half marathon runner or a 5K, 10K runner, or full marathon is where your head is. So
Yeah.
everything takes its course of training, takes its interest. So
Yeah.
I knew I needed speed. I didn't have a lot of patience to train so many hours for another Ironman. While I did that another two times in a local race, but that being said, I knew my head was more into the fast and speed kind of a race because I've been a sprinter. I mean, I've spent 12 years being a sprinter. So always that I think was there.
Yeah.
70.3 somewhere fitted perfectly for me in my jigsaw that it was the perfect puzzle that I wanted to solve because it had speed, it has endurance, it had everything. Fun, similarly, very challenging as well. So I knew that that is where I'm heading towards. And I had a certain roadmap for myself for the next 1 year. And unfortunately, COVID happened, but
Oh yeah.
I knew where I was heading towards, and I knew that's what I wanted in life in terms of my, where I wanted to set my future in, especially in triathlon.
So your world championship dream came true in what, 2024?
Yes, I did the race in 2024, but I got my qualification slot in 2022 Vietnam race. I stood on the podium amongst some of the top Asian athletes,
Wow.
and I got the podium because luckily there were more athletes, and this time I could, take the world championship slot. But I couldn't do that 2024 race, unfortunately, because it was happening in the US and I couldn't get my visa. So obviously, because of multiple reasons, potential immigrant and all of that. So I couldn't
Yeah.
get a visa. And 2023 race was happening in Nice. And in 2022, when I reached out to Ironman saying that, hey, I can't do the race, so they gave me two options. They said either you defer it to 2023 race or 2024 was in Topo.
Okay.
So I think the 2019 race was actually the world championship was happening in Topo in 2020.
Okay.
So somewhere, that, oh, if I had got that slot, I would have gone to Topo. So probably the universe is trying to tell me something. So I opted for 2024 Topo race. And that's how I went and represented India in the World Championship in 2024.
Vietnam, what was your timing?
I did a 5:56.
And no jellyfishes to bother you.
No, I think one of my personal best races, obviously, because it's a PB, and country wise, the infrastructure, the race is beautiful. The sea conditions were just apt that day. It's generally a very rough sea, but that day it was just so calm before the storm. The sea, till I stepped out of the water, it was super calm. Everybody
Mhm.
was very surprised that even the year before the swim got cancelled because of rough sea, but in
Yeah.
2022, the swim was
Mhm.
like, there was mild drizzle the entire bike course. So, you can never ask for an Asian race to be that beautiful with a mild rain throughout the entire bike course. I did have average about 33, close to 33 average for a 90K, and did a
Wow.
201 race post a 90K. So, yeah, I think one of my best races, one of the very well organized races as well. If somebody is
Mhm.
looking to do an Asian race, I would highly recommend because it's a flat course. It's a one lapper of the 21 kilometers and a small two lappers of the 45 kilometers in the bike course. It's a nice race. So yeah, I think for me it was blessing in disguise because I could spend a lot of time training. I've never had an opportunity to train like a pro. I used to have one workout in the morning, one workout in the evening, and one workout in the afternoon. So that's like luxury, right? Like training like a pro. So COVID, I was able to focus on that, plan my diet better, plan my nutrition better, what was working, what was not working, what are the disadvantages. Because I started
Mhm.
doing a lot of experiment on myself. That was the time. Because there was no races
Mhm.
happening, I could do whatever I want with myself. What nutrition worked for
Yeah.
me, what did not, how the bloating used to be. There were so many brands that were coming up in India, also plant based. So I had an opportunity to work with a lot of them also. They're like, hey, I'm starting up. Do you want to be, not like a guinea pig, but would you be interested to try our product? Give us honest feedbacks. I used to do a lot of that for a lot of brands.
Yeah. So I was asking, when did your coaching journey start?
So after 2019, I mean, Deepak has been insisting me to do the coaching certification from 2018 because he knew I had that coaching thing in my head. But I said it's not fair unless
Mhm.
I finish an Ironman race to coach somebody, called an Ironman certified coach and coach somebody for an Ironman race. I mean, you can't be a half marathoner and train somebody. At least in my head, that's how I was thinking. So I said, let me finish an
Yeah.
Ironman and at least understand what it takes to do that kind of a race. And
Mhm.
after finishing my 2019 race, I kind of decided to get into coaching and I reached out to Deepak and I asked him, hey, can you help me out, understand how this whole thing works? And then he guided me through the Ironman U certification. And it took about 3 months. Then I got myself certified. And I was working part time with Deepak as an assistant coach. He used to give me initially someone who's just a budding
Mhm.
athlete, who's just starting with triathlon, and especially women athletes. So Yoska had a lot of assistant coaches. but women centric. He wanted somebody to help women so that more women come. They want to get into endurance sport and things
Yeah.
like that. So
True.
that's how I got into the coaching side of things, and it's been a great. I think coaching has actually helped me build a lot of patience, which I've never
Mhm.
had as an individual for me as an athlete. But coaching has helped me build that patience. And somewhere now I feel nice. I feel good when somebody else is achieving what I could not. Certain timings when I see some of my athletes cracking a sub 18 minutes 5K. I don't know if I'll ever reach that point, but it's so nice to train them to reach their personal goals and see a good
Yeah.
satisfaction in them. I think I've matured as an individual after becoming a coach.
But did you continue your running as well, or you have laser focused on triathlons after you started the triathlon journey?
So till 2024, I was laser focused on triathlon and training athletes specific to triathlon. Of course, there are a few women athletes I've trained for run specific, cycling specific, but I think till 2024, I was very focused on being a triathlete, wanted to establish certain things in the triathlon fraternity. Now that my portfolio from the work front has extensively increased, and I shouldn't say I don't have the bandwidth, but just that I want to be more on the coaching side of things and have more people do the race. Because I never had that guidance. I never had that go-to person to go and ask a lot of things. Of course, now AI is there. They're just click away in terms of getting your information. But I think endurance sport and triathlon, because you work with three disciplines and fourth discipline being your nutrition, it's important that there's a coach who's monitoring you, giving you the right decisions, pushing you when they have to, pulling you when you're overdoing things. AI cannot replace a coach. At least that's a strong belief that I have. And it's important that there is somebody with a slightly more experience, knowledge, and understanding to guide you through the whole process. So currently, I'm enjoying doing that and focusing more on my runs these days. I have a few big goals this year. I want to do some ultra runs to test where my mental and physical strength is. I've always felt I'm mentally strong, physically weak, but I want to go test in an ultra to see whether how my mental and my physical, if I'm able to crack certain things. I have a few run goals this year. I
Mhm.
think the triathlete in me will always be there. I mean, I still go for a swim session. I still ride my indoor cycle whenever time permits. But it's not that it's a training block that I'm putting now and focusing on the next event. So I just finished my Colombo race. Honestly, was planning to go and hang the gloves and say I'm retiring, but looks like universe has other plans. The swim got cancelled, and I just did the duathlon, so it's not valid to call it a retirement race. So I think I need to go back and do another race.
There was a crocodile scare there, right?
Yes,
Yeah, there's some drama around it.
yeah. And we were just swimming in that course the previous day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We were just swimming in the same course all by ourselves.
Yeah.
And and Saturday evening at 4 we get a news that the race is cancelled because they found crocodile. I'm like, shit. Thank God we didn't encounter with a crocodile, but that was very scary.
Tell me honestly, didn't the wildlife photographer in you want to take out your camera and go and click a few pictures of the crocodile?
Not with a crocodile for sure inside the water.
That would be a bit too much.
Yeah, that would definitely be a bit too much. I mean, while I'm a wildlife photographer, I still like to not get into wildlife space. I always respect nature. I don't like to intrude into their space. Even as a photographer, I had certain ethics. I don't take certain photographs and things like that because of my ethics with nature.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely not a picture with a probably a selfie from the shore, but definitely not any encounter or a close up photo of the crocodile.
But has your photography remained intact or you kind of lost touch? It's really difficult
Uh,
for you to be able to take out
I
time.
think it's a hobby, definitely, but I've definitely, I mean, I sold my bazooka lens and my DSLR to buy my cycle for my first
How
Ironman
how
race.
unfortunate is that? Seriously. You don't need to answer the question after this, please.
I still take a lot of pictures. I do have another Instagram page which says a creative side of Aarti. I write poems. I do a lot of paintings. So all of that I post it on the other Instagram handle of mine. I'm not good with portrait and people.
Hmm.
That's not my forte, but I still take a lot of wildlife photos whenever I have, I mean, iPhone or I rent a camera when I'm going out on a trek or traveling with family and friends, I know there is certain birds that I'll find and things like that, then definitely I take a camera along with me. I mean, these days very convenient, so I don't have to own something. So
Yeah.
just renting it out for a couple of days. And nowadays, iPhones, we have so many attachments. Technology has gone drastically. So, they're just as pocket friendly as possible these days.
Yeah.
The touch
Very
is
true.
definitely there. My running group still asks me to take photos like, Aki, you take the best angle, bring the best mask, can you take this picture? So happy to do all of that.
But the challenge is that you won't find people to be able to take good enough photographs of yourself.
I'm a shy person when it comes to camera, so I'm perfectly fine. As long as people don't pull me into a photo saying you need to pose, I'm perfectly fine. I love taking pictures. You can always see me taking pictures. I'll always ask people, hey, this lighting is good. Why don't you stand in this angle? Let me take a shot. So I love doing all of that. So as long as you don't bring me to the frame and ask me to act or smell, that's going to be very difficult.
I asked the another coach on the podcast, what's more difficult to push yourself beyond your limits or to get your trainee to excel beyond their expectations?
I think it's both, because for me it is more challenging because I'm the devil's advocate. I'm a very critic. I don't get satisfied very soon. Before I could achieve something, there is already two bigger goals in front of me. So it's very difficult to satisfy me. But I think as a coach, what I've learned is it's important to make the athlete believe in what their potential is. I think that's a very thin line. Not everyone understands their potential. And that's what, as a coach, it's our responsibility to bring the best out of them when they expect the unexpected, right?
Yeah.
I've got a lot of trainees. I tell them, don't worry about the race. Your PB need not be on the race. It can be just on your training runs. Don't go focusedly saying, I have a race 5K. I need to go crack only there. That becomes an added stress. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
anxiety. Then that leads to a lot of other complications, which is unnecessary. You get a
Yeah.
sleepless night, you get a bubble movement, and the race goes for a toss even before you start a race.
Yeah.
So I always tell them that your PBs need not be on a race. Let it be as part of your training. And also your race needs to be looked as another training day more than a race and an exam. At least for me, I'm a very anxious person. So when it comes to exams, I get fever. My mom still mocks at me, saying, oh, you have an Ironman race, hope you have not got a fever. So that's my mindset. So I think taking life examples and helping my athletes, live their dream. So the challenge, if you ask me the challenge, it's, I think, for me personal. That's more demanding because to convince myself that I can do something,
Yeah.
because I've always been a biggest critic for myself. But when it comes to my athletes, I think they believe me and they trust me. So
Yeah.
that's important. And helping them crack and living their dream, I think I'm happy and content with that at this point.
So when someone is picking up the sport relatively new and you're coaching them, would you want them to have very specific goals or just saying, "Oh, I want to just get to the finish line within time" is good enough? Do you think that that is still a good enough as a driver to achieve the goal, or would you want them to have time bound programs or plans?
See, it purely boils down to person to person. Okay, if you for an example, if I can give you three examples of my own trainees, I
Yeah.
have women athletes who reach out to me and say, I just need to have some active lifestyle. So to them, if you start talking about time, it's Greek and Latin to them. They're just finding their newfound love to walking and running and things like that. And you suddenly start putting these numbers into their heads, races into their heads, they're going to be lost, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for me to start talking to them about numbers, pace. They hardly know anything. They're just starting with a run walk. They don't
Yeah.
know half the terminologies that we speak, and you can't go and flaunt all your knowledge and everything to somebody who's absolutely ignorant. You need to go to their level, make them understand what is their goal. And most of these women who come to me, they have a time constraint. It is very difficult for them to first take that first step of coming out of their comfort zone and saying, I want to get into a fitness, because they're
Yeah.
so dependent, and so many things around them is so connected. They need to make sure the kid is going to the school, they need to make sure the husband eats his breakfast. They're constantly having something. The first thing that I tell them is, beyond all of this, look at it as your me time.
Hmm.
It's purely spending that 30 minutes to 45 minutes is just for you, so that you
Yeah.
have a productive day to, run your family, run
Yeah.
your work. And generally, women are very multitasking, so they know it. So all I'm trying to do is just help them time manage it and give them that me time. So this is one cadre of not just
Yeah.
women, even some men come to me saying that,
Sure.
yeah, I just want to know what this fitness is all about. I want to have a healthy lifestyle. I just want to change my lifestyle of how I'm currently being addicted to certain things or working long hours, which is unnecessary. So can you
Hmm.
help me, mold me? And if you feel fitness could help me drive that, and if it's all about habit formation, once somebody does something for 21 days, it becomes an habit,
Yeah.
right?
Very true.
So that's what I do for these set of athletes. There are some of them who come to me saying that, okay, I've done a lot of running, I've done a lot of cycling, I want to try something new.
Hmm.
In those cases, swim becomes the biggest entry barrier. And I walk them through the process because swim is a very technical sport. I'm not saying run and cycling are not, but that's something that we have done as a child, at a
Yeah.
younger age. We have run, we walk, we cycle to school, we cycle, at least this Gen Z kids, at least they cycle inside the compound if they're not cycling to school. So the
Does
cycle,
it count? Does it count as
at least
suitable?
balancing
Can
skill. I
can
should
you take it out?
they have the balancing skill. I would tick for that because a lot of them don't have the balancing
I
skill.
agree.
So, so swim becomes a very large entry barrier, and a lot of them don't understand that's a life skill as well, right?
Yeah.
Swim is a life skill.
Totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. So, if you look at a foreign country, if you look at a Western country, they throw the kids at a very young age into the pool, into the sea, into the lake, and the rivers.
Yeah.
The minute we see our kids going next to the sea, like, oh, it will swallow you, you will drown, you will die. That's the impression we are setting in our kids. Right?
Yeah.
So I tell them, I walk them through the process, and I set certain realistic goals and examples for them. It's very
Hmm.
important for me to set that expectation, and instead of saying, "Ha, ho jayega, don't worry, I'm there, I will take care of everything." It's not going to work that way because I'm not going to be the one swimming for them or cycling for them. It's they who have to do that. So, a
Yeah.
realistic approach of telling them what their current fitness level is, analyzing that, telling them
Yeah.
how and when it will take, and what they need to do to reach that goal.
Hmm.
And the other category is people who have experience of this. They come to me specifically for a race,
Yeah.
or they come specifically for a time. So I have handled these three major chunk of athletes who reach out to me because those people, the third bucket, are very specific. They know
Hmm.
exactly what they want. Sometimes they take classes for us. This is the data I've got. This is what ChatGPT says. This is what Garmin. This is the stats. I'm
Can you
comparing.
rectify this? Can you confirm if this is right?
Absolutely.
Now imagine how doctors feel nowadays.
Exactly. Like, I mean, talking about doctors, I had a stomach bug and I said, Doc, I think I have a food poison. Or I said, did everybody who ate the food had the same issue? No, no, it was just me. Then don't call it a food poison. You're
I
using
know.
the wrong terminology. I'm the doctor.
Yeah.
Let me examine you and tell you what exactly is happening.
Yeah.
So,
True.
you're absolutely right. I mean, imagine we taking a long thing to the doctor and saying, this is what ChatGPT told me when I said, these are my symptoms.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have certain serious athletes. Some people are very overly ambitious. So, I think for me, what has worked the best is I'm very open, I'm very straightforward. I set the expectations with them right at the start. I don't overpromise them anything. And we have, like, every month there's an evaluation with them saying what the progress has been, because only then they also understand. Suddenly you see 3 months of a training block, and they're like, I've been training with you for 3 months, but what have you done in the 3 months also matters. No, you can't take a break in between for 1 month not doing anything and saying, 3 months ho gaya, I've not progressed. So it's
Yeah.
always good to have those every month kind of a progress to see from whether it is in building your aerobic base, or improving your speed, whether it is improving your muscle, whether it is whatever quantitatively we can evaluate. I generally keep doing that, and I also give them small wins. That kind of motivates them, and like, okay, I
Hmm.
did this.
Yeah.
Some workouts I tell them upfront that this is going to be a tough workout, So be mentally prepared. It's okay to have a DNF in a training than to go and DNF in a race, right? So
Of
it's
course,
okay.
true.
Learn to fail.
Yeah,
And I put that as part of my notes to them in the race. This is going to be tough. Go with an open mind. Don't think you're a cat's whiskers, and then feel dejected. I've got one or two athletes who feel the minute they're not able to sustain a certain pace, they start crying. I'm like, it's okay. I mean, that's how you learn. It's okay to fail. Every failure is a stepping stone to success. So that's something I
yes.
strongly believe in. So yeah, so these are some of my insights of how I coach my bunch of trainees.
You mentioned you have some runs coming up. You've earmarked which ultras that you want to go for, unless it's
I might be
unless it's
overly ambitious here, but I want to do
you know,
the Jaisalmer.
sometimes public affirmations of plans helps you to make sure that you stick to it as well.
Very true. My world championship was a public affirmation in one of my podcasts in a radio channel in 2022. I'm a strong believer of affirmation, visualization, and things like that. So, I mean, I'm not shying away from saying which race it is. I'm planning to do the Jaisalmer 100K. I've never done beyond a 42 so far. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I have a year to train. Of course, I have few races that I also need to organize, but I hope, fingers crossed, all goes well and I'm able to finish the race.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question because typically a lot of people ask me, because I don't do ultras. I've done a 50K Malnad and I've done a 56K Two Oceans. But after having spent 4 5 years in running from 2013 to 2017, I found triathlon to be a better activity to migrate to than ultras. And it's interesting that you have got such good success at triathlons and now you want to go and do a 100K ultra.
I think the reason for me to do an ultra is, at least this is belief or what I think of myself, that I don't have enough patience when
Hmm.
it comes to self, right? So I've never done more than a 300 BRM because it's not that I'll get a saddle soreness and things like that. I don't
Yeah.
believe I have the patience for an endurance. So for doing one Busselton Ironman and two local Ironman races, I'm like, no, I'm not getting into the Ironman because somewhere I don't see me able to spend that much of a time on training,
Yeah.
and also somewhere I feel that's not where my head is. But I wanted to do an Ironman for my personal satisfaction and for the dream that I wanted to do for my friend. I'm happy and content there. So this is more of testing whether mentally am I
Got
going
it.
to quit or I
Yes.
have the willpower to finish. It's not about timing or anything. It's
Yeah.
purely where I feel is my biggest weakness is I'm trying to see if I can break that mental barrier and see if I can run a 100K. If I don't,
Right.
I take it as a learning. I mean, I'm not going to shy away from openly saying that. I've
Yeah.
always failed in a lot of races. I've always felt I'm a cat's whiskers in a lot of races and I've gone and bonked. And I always take it as a learning. Okay, what did that's where, when you first asked me, do I journal? Actually, when you start writing certain things, it actually comes and helps you when you go back and retrospect to see what had happened, what could have gone better, and things like that. And most of the times, 98% those journals have come and very wide openly told me what mistakes I've done. So I want to journal this also to see if I finish, great, I'll be happy, maybe target another ultra race. But for me, purely is to test mentally if I'm game and ready to. I think physically you can always train yourself. When it
Yeah.
comes to endurance sports, it's more as the mind game. I think this is again a belief that I have. Anything more than 42 is 42 itself is a mind game. Till 32, it's part of your training. It's done. The last is when
Very
you
true.
hit the wall, and I've cursed
Yeah.
myself every full
The
marathon. I
famous
think I've
wall,
done about
as
four,
they
five.
say.
The famous hitting the wall and cursing yourself. Why have you signed up for a full marathon? Why are you dragging yourself? And all of that questions. But I've started enjoying my full
Yeah.
marathons lately. So I think I should fairly be able to manage an ultra. Fingers crossed again. I hope I train for it and then finish the race as well.
Sounds good. It's been a beautiful journey, and I typically reserve the last question for myself. So, what's the question that you have for me?
What's the question I have for you? Okay, what is your next big race that you're going to do? I mean, any international races in the cards?
Yeah, so I'm targeting my next Ironman to be in Thailand, August 22nd. So I just started the training for that.
Lovely. Nice. Any
Yeah, the first
timing,
one was
finish timing in
Kazakhstan
mind?
22.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kazakhstan was a surprise. I don't know if you know my story, but I did the Ironman with a fractured wrist. But I surprised myself with the timing, which was 15 hours. I'm not trying to go for a good timing right now, but I got a DNF in Barcelona last year. So I just want to make amends for that and get my rhythm back. I keep telling this friend of mine who's also an Ironman. He's done 2 Ironmans, and I tell him that you can't call yourself an Ironman if you don't have Ironman level of fitness, and you can only have an Ironman level of fitness if you're training for an Ironman on a regular basis. So I hope to be doing one Ironman every year. I believe, sorry if it offends you, but I believe
No,
only Ironman is a full one, not 70.3.
no, definitely.
Yeah,
Ironman
so I'm,
is the full distance. No two ways about it.
yeah. And in fact, the reason I don't like the 70.3 is the reason why you love it. Because, that whole speed factor which comes in, it takes away the joy of, transitioning three activities and really immersing yourself in those activities. And that time is always on your mind. And obviously, it leads to challenges, it leads to risk. And in such a long race, I would rather not be taking a risk. I would rather be just making sure that I'm finishing, getting to the finish line in one piece, with my bike also in one piece. And that's where you can celebrate, right? I mean, some of the times you might really do well, you might miss out by time target by a few minutes, but that mental headache, mental load on you would probably be very difficult for you to unshackle and say, oh, I had targeted this 7 hours and now it's 7 hours 15 minutes, and I'm feeling miserable. Like, at least I'm not there yet. I've enjoyed my sub twos and half marathon, and I know how good a fast run is. It's not that I've ever been like that. But again, in full marathon, I did once a sub four, and I'm kind of very happy to let that sub four remain there. I don't want to spoil my joy of full marathons by having to target a sub four every time and then feeling miserable. Oh my God. So I got a sub four in Mumbai in 2023. I got a 3:54, and four races after that I was at 4:00:02,
Wow.
4:02, 4:07, 4:04:10. Just let it be, man. Just let. I've done a sub four once. I better be happy about it. Yeah. So I got the Tallinn Ironman coming up, and I got the New York World Major coming up in October. So those are the two races to look forward to. Yeah.
I mean, while this podcast is out and things, I mean, this is what my statement is. Probably 5 years from now, when I turn 45, probably I'll be like, chalo, let's go back to Ironman. The speedster inside me is dead now. Let's get into endurance sport. God
You
knows.
should. You should definitely.
I'm
Great.
somebody who's very wild in my decisions, and the path that I take in life are always very drastic. So I don't
Yeah.
know what I'll be doing in the next 5 years. For
Yeah, no,
all
I'm a strong
something
believer of
you.
I'm a strong believer of saying never say never, because I had promised myself I will never even consider ultras. But there were two back-to-back podcasts where two dear friends talked about comrades, and they're kind of literally making me start reading about it. And I might be on the start line of comrades in 2027. I don't know whether I'll reach the finish line, but I might end up being on the start line
That's in
somewhere.
my bucket list as well. So maybe
Yeah,
we'll do together the 2027.
sounds good. We'll plan it together.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot for the time, and really loved the journey that you have gone through. And carry on the good work that you're doing and producing or manufacturing more Ironmans.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a great evening as well for me. And thank you so much for having me. It's good
Thank
to
you.
share across. And I just hope just helps at least one person to get into some kind of fitness. And if it could just trigger one women athlete out there saying next day morning, chalo, let me get out and get out of the comfort zone. That's all I'm looking for.
Great. Thank you.
Take care.